Sorry. Okay, welcome to this April 29th, 2025 Governor's Workforce Development Board Strategic Planning Workgroup meeting. For the record, my name is Nancy Olson, Chair of the Strategic Planning Subcommittee. Tiffany, will you please take roll call, confirm a quorum, and verify posting?
Yes. Chair Olson,
Here.
Vice Chair Estepona,
Here.
Drazen Ellis,
Present.
Brett Miller,
Present.
Michael Yoder,
Present.
Robert Fink,
Present.
Ariana Florence.
She's signing on right now.
Okay. Armando Leyva,
Here.
David Schmidt, and Dr. Tiffany Tyler. Okay. Tiffany Vasquez, Office of Workforce Innovation for the record. I hereby affirm that this April 29th Governor's Workforce Development Board Strategic Planning Workgroup meeting has reached a quorum. I further affirm that the agenda and notice for this meeting was properly posted pursuant to Nevada's Open Meeting Law, NRS 241020.
Thank you. Before we proceed, I would kindly request that anyone who speaks today identify themselves for the record. Continuing on to agenda item number 4, public comments. Members of the public are invited to provide comments at this time. No action may be taken on any matters during public comments until the matter itself has been included on an agenda as an item for possible action. Public comments are limited to 3 minutes per person. Please clearly state and spell your full name. For anybody who would like to make a public comment, you can go to zoom.com or you can dial in at 669-900-6833. The meeting ID is 865-5156-8945. And the passcode is 914552. Do we have any public comments on the telephone? Any on Zoom? Okay. Hearing or seeing no public comments, we will move on to agenda item number 5. Welcome and introductions. This is the revitalized strategic planning work group. And so with that in mind, I wanted to go ahead and do very brief introductions. Just basically your name, your job, and what connection you have to the workforce system. So Nancy Olson, I am the Adult Education Program Supervisor and State Director for Adult Education in Nevada. And most of you know that I have a fairly in-depth knowledge of WIOA. Next person, I'll just call on people. Brett.
Hello, Brett Miller, Strategic Analysis Manager at Workforce Connections. And that's the Southern Local Workforce Development Board. And I'll call on Drazen.
Oh, okay. Drazen, yeah, we'll do it that way.
All right. Well, thanks for that, Brett. So my name is Drazen Ellis. I'm the Administrator of Rehabilitation Division. So we are situated within Dieter. We say we are the R in Dieter. So we assist individuals with disabilities in finding jobs. So that's vocational rehabilitation part of the rehab division, and the other part is our Bureau of Disability Education that processes all the Social Security applications for disability claims. So for both underage and older individuals. So that's usually not the more I guess public aspect of our division. Nonetheless, they're both similar size. In any case, so what else we were talking about? Just intro what we do. Leave it there.
Your connection to the workforce system.
Right. So I think as part of vocational rehabilitation, we are Title IV of VOA. So this is specifically designated to assist individuals with disability in finding employment. Title IV is not in a sense in itself a new law that was passed with the passage of VOA. It dates back to 1973, and then it was approved in kind of various iterations of the labor bill, I guess. So I think Title IV is, I think, one of the members of the or the seat is one of the seats of that's required to be on the governor's workforce board. And I guess I'll now go to you, Robbie.
Hey, sounds good. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Robbie Fink. I'm the director of the Adult Education Services at Catholic Charities. We are Title II, preparing language learners for the workforce.
You want to pick someone to go next?
I'll go. This is Daniel Dong. I'm with the Employee and Be Business Hub as part of Dieter. We're mainly Title III, as we work directly with businesses and help support getting their jobs filled.
Yeah. Hey, Edward, I'm going to call on you.
Okay, Edward Estepona with Estepona Group. We're a full service marketing advertising agency of 32 years. I'm in the private sector. I'm probably, I would guess, the only one in this room in the private sector. However, where we come in from a standpoint of workforce is we've done a fair amount of marketing in the space of workforce. So when we talk about what type, WIOA Title I and Title III have been the spaces we primarily played in, but again, always looking at it from a consumer point of view to create less barriers to access. And I'm going to call on David.
I'm Dave Schmidt. I am Chief Economist with the Research and Analysis Bureau in Dieter. We're well represented here. I do information, employment and unemployment, data, charts, analysis. I usually submit about 500 pages to the state plan that gets sent down to about 50 because we don't need that many charts. Also here to help try to support and bring the information about the state of the workforce to the table so that the other strategic partners have a sense of where we are, where we're going, and what's happening out there. And I'm sorry I was running late, but I have no idea who's talked yet, so I will hesitate to call on anyone else.
I will take the lead for you, David. Okay, Mike Yoder.
Hi, Mike Yoder. I am the work for the Division of Welfare and Supportive Services. I'm the statewide chief representing TANF Title IV, and I'm the primary liaison for the agency for workforce development and WIOA system partners. And I don't know who to pass it on to. Armando, maybe?
Naturally. This is Armando Leyva from State of Nevada Welfare Division, Workforce Services Representative and Employer Relations for the Workforce Development Unit and Recovery Friendly Workplace Unit. And yeah, work under Mike Yoder and work regularly with all of you fine people.
I'm gonna go ahead and ask Benny Wilson to introduce himself.
Hi, my name is Benny Wilson. I am the coordinator for the Northern Nevada Sheet Metal Apprenticeship. We run a 4-year registered apprenticeship program, and we train on a variety of equipment, and we're always looking for help and finding qualified help. And I know some of you from other meetings and stuff, and I got the notice of this like an hour ago, so I'm not all that prepared. So
Well, thank you for joining us. And Ariana?
Good afternoon. Ariana Florence, Title II Adult Ed. Just Nancy's right or left hand, whatever's needed for the day. Thank you.
Sometimes both. Okay, and I see Elaine. Is that Elaine from Owen?
You might not be paying attention. She was in the teams trying to coordinate there.
Okay.
She stepped away for a moment.
Oh, no problem, no problem. Cam,
Morning. Well, we'll just say it's morning. We'll pretend like it's morning.
yeah.
So formerly Goodwill, so all in the workforce development, things like that. And I was fortunate to be a part of providing feedback on the first strategic plan. So doing some insight there and adding some verbiage and wordsmithing and things like that. Currently with Las Vegas Metro Police Foundation, and we support the Metro Police in many areas, but one of the areas that aligns here is our community engagement, because we partner to support a lot of the youth programs that they do, and a lot of what we're trying to connect to is youth that they're engaging, what's next, how are they engaging in the workforce. So that's, the connection. And then I'm also a member of the disconnected youth, aka opportunity youth, that is being housed over at Workforce Connections. So active in that space as well.
Thank you very much. Okay. So I think we got everybody. Oh, Tiffany, I don't want to miss you.
Tiffany Vasquez, work for Owen. I'm just the management analyst too, the GWDB liaison.
Thank you. And not just, you actually saved me today. So
I was going to come off of mute and say, not just.
exactly.
She's the reason why I made it today, because she's like, just a friendly reminder.
Yeah, well, luckily she reminded me too. This meeting, I was convinced it was 2:00. Okay, so moving on to agenda item number 6 for discussion and informational item only. We want to talk about the strategies that are currently in the state plan, as well as the strategic plan that was published last year. And then going from that to talking about the changes or working towards changes in the strategy, in the strategic plan. So with that, let me bring up a document. Do I have it? It is really snuck up on me. Okay, here it is. So I am going to, do you have it set for me to share, Tiffany? Okay. Thank you. Okay, can you see the date 3/12/25? Okay, great. All right. So in the currently approved state plan, we have 3 overarching goals. Many of you were a part of developing those. And so this should look familiar to you. We have the goal of population, that we will increase engagement with groups who have traditionally high unemployment or low labor force participation. And then we've got some strategies that we've identified. And then we've got some measurements that we've also identified. The second goal is alignment. And that is that we will increase the operational alignment of services among required partners. And again, we have several strategies that have been identified, as well as measurements. Third goal was collaboration. That we would improve the collaboration between the required partners through the use of common processes and systems. And again, some strategies and measurements. Okay, so this is what is currently in the state plan. Any questions about these? And I know I'm scrolling, probably making your motion sick. No questions?
Did you want questions or thoughts?
Thoughts will work too. This is a discussion and informational item.
Just in trying to look at this with a fresh mind, I guess I can say David Schmidt for the record, just in case that's not picked up in the recording. I've been at legislative session enough and been, come on, say your name. But try and look at it with a fresh set of eyes. It just feels like a really long list. Like trying to think about, from a strategic planning perspective, how much, like, if we have a large number of strategies, are we going to be effective in helping to focus efforts on carrying any of them out? Or is it like, we're doing a bunch of stuff and we will continue to do the same bunch of stuff that we always do for another, couple of cycles around our star? So would it be worth pruning this down? And if so, what? Like, would we be better at getting common intake and common processes if we narrow the focus, as opposed to leaving it super wide? That's not to say there aren't other good things it could be doing, but from a strategic level, not everything happening within the system necessarily needs to be a part of the strategic plan. I don't know if that makes sense, but just sort of like gut reaction to seeing all of this.
Nancy Olson for the record, it makes absolute sense, and I think it very cleanly takes us on to the next agenda item. But before we do that, is there anyone else that has any questions or comments, thoughts?
I guess this is Drazen. So I guess I would one thing that when I look at this is really I think maybe we need to evaluate how much effort and energy would some of these things take to accomplish, and whether we think that the outcomes are worth that effort, and then what are we taking away by not doing something else. I think maybe I'll take also the common intake as an example. While the idea of common intake sounds great, in reality, not just the feasibility of getting it accomplished, but also from the standpoint that would common intake then create more barriers if somebody would have to apply for some set of services, and now as that information would kind of flow from one place to the next before they get actually to the place that would provide them services, what is that time that would take? And are we able to fund some kind of an infrastructure there that would kind of carry out some of this? So I think maybe for some of these, like, while they're great ideas, we really have to kind of, I think, assess the reality of it happening, whether it's doable, feasible, and whether it's like provide something positive, I guess, to the community. So.
I think, I agree that we need a starting point. Oh, Nancy Olson for the record. I agree that we need a starting point, to find out if we go through the goals that I had, listed from the state plan, we could actually look at what's been done since then. So, yeah. And unfortunately, my computer has decided to like freeze up on me. So I am struggling. That's why I stopped. I guess it doesn't like it when you have a million things open. Move on. So sorry.
I guess while we wait, one comment, Ariana Florence for the record. When we're talking about, I agree that when you look at it all, it's like 100 things listed in a list with a bunch of bullets. But if we look at it in a higher level, we're looking at 3 like large objectives, basically just the 3. So I guess we could, in a sense, we could put down all the things that we have listed and either go through them individually or scratch them all and start our new list on each and individual item to decide what do we think alignment looks like. So we don't have to go use every single one that's there. I think those were sort of examples that we had come up with at that point, but the 3 overarching are the main things, not like all those individual little, bullets.
Yeah, I saw Edward's hand first.
So Edward Estepona for the record. I agree. I think there's some of those things that kind of are a little bit overlapping and possibly you could simplify and condense it. To address something that Drazen said, and I think this singular intake, and again, I'm trying to recall back from some of the past meetings that I've been involved in. And I think Derek Jemfrey at the time was involved in those. And so he was supposed to be the tech side of these things to try to figure out how to marry all these different systems. And I don't know where that ever came to, but I was just thinking out loud, like, I think now's the opportunity with so many things being broken every place we go. Now's the opportunity to kind of look at it from a different set of lens. I think we've all looked at it from the set of lens of what I've had to do in my department or whatever software we've had to deal with. And I kind of want to take a step back and say, simple single intake may be as simple as a Google form. And I know the state hates Google and you'd have to do something with Microsoft. But at the end of the day, is it something that can produce a CSV file that can be intake into all of your guys' individual systems? But at the same time, having that single intake contains all of the data points. So if one person moves from Title 1 and then starts at Title 2 and then moves to Title 1, we already have all their information and it just moves forward. These are things I think what we were thinking about those single intake. Now, I understand the complexity because everybody's on a different system and the costs that could be involved. But CSV files to me are simple spreadsheet files that can be done with various spreadsheet tools that already exist in most people's software. So again, that's just my thinking along that line. If everything's going to be broken, let's go fix it the way we should fix it, not the way we think it should have been done based on some past notion.
Nancy Olson for the record, and Brett and Kim, I will get to you in just a second. I wanted to mention that we are working on building an interface that will communicate between Title 1, 3, and 2. We've got the contract amended and fully approved. We've got the vendors on board to build that interface, and it would be in real time when an individual walks in the door. Let's say that, you know, James Smith went to Workforce Connections last week and walks into adult ed. And we say, oh, so I see you went to, you know, Title 1. And we pull up the information, and that person does not have to refill out all their information, their demographics. And if we test them, then Workforce Connections can get a copy of that assessment, or vice versa. It's going to be pretty much in real time. And you know, that connection between the three titles at least. Drazen, we haven't talked too much about connecting Title 4 yet, but since Title 4 is connected with Employee MV, we think it's doable. So that is one huge step towards that common intake and the alignment and the collaboration. So we're really excited about that. Brett?
Brett Miller for the record. So just to refresh my memory, the three high-level arching goals or strategies are directly from the state plan, correct? Okay. And then my only other observation, I agree with Ariana completely that, that those I think those three ones are probably the appropriate ones, and the strategies behind them, we can trim them or do whatever we'd like with those. I do have an observation though that the collaboration and alignment seem to be like really close together. So, I mean, if we were going to pick three, we might be able to combine those two and come up with a third one, but that's my thoughts.
Awesome for the record. Yeah, I remember at the time talking about the difference between alignment and collaboration, and there is a lot of overlap, obviously. So yeah, we could probably combine those if we decide that that's the route to go. Of course, they're still going to be in the state plan until we do revisions. Good luck. Cam, I see your hand.
Sorry, Cam Green for the record, and Brett actually said exactly what I was gonna say. So, thinking the same thing, and having been a part of the process, it was more like, here, these are the steps that are gonna get to, sort of this, bucket, and we have to take them. And we're thinking about, a streamlined process, or, a one application for all. A lot of the things like collaborating, communicating, thinking about braiding funding, a lot of those things have to happen. So I feel like just using the right language around like which of these are tasks and which of these are the strategic, oversight. And then I had a side question about the scorecard, and forgive me if I'm missing it on the map. Is red, and you might be getting into this, not started at all or off track, and then yellow is in progress on the strategic plan scorecard?
Okay, yeah, actually, hold on, let me put that up. Don't tell me this is gonna it's acting up again. Let me stop sharing. Wow, this is really not cooperating today.
Nancy, why don't you have Tiffany share it since she's got all the documentation?
Actually, I've got it now, but it might be safer, Tiffany, if you want to pull up the 24-27 strategic plan. As mine is really not. Mine's not working well today. My Adobe is acting up. Thank you. So, yeah, Cam, going on to the next item on the agenda. Agenda item number 7 for discussion and informational item only. We wanted to discuss the review of the strategic plan. So I do not believe that anything coordinated has been done with the strategic plan since it was published. Would that be a fair statement? Others?
I could make a different thing, but yeah.
Aside from individual work, yes.
And that's what I was saying as far as coordinated. Yeah, I think there's individual work that has been done, certainly. But it's not as if anybody was using this, to my knowledge. I know we were not using this as, you know, a driving factor. So one of the things that we wanted to talk about today is this compared to the goals that and strategies that are listed in the state plan. Scroll back up, Tiffany. Yeah, thank you. Okay. Keep going. Couple. 1, 2 more, I think. Yeah, okay. So here we go. So the goals identified in the strategic plan were population, engagement, and alignment. And I don't have any problem with any of these 3. But under each of them, there were things that were kind of assigned to individuals that were not a part of the process. And there were deadlines that were made that were unrealistic. So the question for today, and I may be getting to, agenda item number 8 for possible action. The question is, do we take this strategic plan and revise it, or do we create a new one? And I will say that I would like to take this and revise it. That's my vote. So does anyone else have, okay, Brett says revise. And Dr. Tiffany Tyler Garner said, apologies for the delay. One clarifying question, do we have infrastructure or resources for the measurements and strategies proposed? So I think that's a great question. A lot of this in both the state plan and the strategic plan involve things that we are doing, but not necessarily doing system-wide, I believe. Mike Yoder says, I agree with revising. Dr. Tiffany Tyler Garner says revise. Drazen, I see your hand.
I think Edward and David said they're hearing before mine.
Okay. David says, my question would be, if revised, would it be used? If not, would there be something we would use? So I think that the idea behind this originally was a simple document that could be used to track our progress. At least that was my idea behind it. And then it kind of grew from there. And as I mentioned in here, there are many of these things that involve groups or people that were not involved.
So Nancy, Edward Espona for the record, I think revise makes sense. I think we need to go through each one. Because the problem is remember we broke up in mini teams. When I call mini teams, it's like 2 people work on it. So if I'm working on it with somebody else and we're just thinking, okay, we don't know the full scope of everything in that way. So I think the best way to go to it is attacking it one at a time, having the right people in the room when we're attacking each one of these things one at a time, and making sure we get agreement. Once that's done, then we need to kind of go back to creating something that who's accountable. Because I think, again, to David's deal is it going to be used? Accountability is probably the number one thing. And so there's always tends to be 1 or 2 at most that tends to be more accountable, because it tends to be what they do within the services that they provide. So coming back to this group and just reporting accountability to that, I think is going to kind of create is it being used or is it not being used kind of thing. So I would approach it this way, at least, to simplify it, so that we get people. You just have to do it one at a time, and you chunk it out and you make it as simple as possible. So that if we overcomplicate it, which I think when I was looking at this document, it got pretty overcomplicated when you started looking at some of those diagrams. And I think that just destroys the whole purpose of the whole thing. So let's go back, look at it. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater, but let's just kind of just chunk it down, is what I would say.
Nancy Olson for the record, can I get a motion to revise the strategic plan?
Edward Espona for the record, I make the motion to revise the existing strategic plan.
And a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Agenda item passed.
Nancy, can I chime in on one thing? And I actually have to hop off in a second, but I wanted to chime in on one thing on the plan. Cam Green for the record. So it sounds like it's being revised. But I think one of the things too in the revision is to really consider, how we're going to track and collect the data from the outcomes. One of the simple, easy things that I think we all agreed upon and, that some of us are doing are like something as simple as, did you know? One of the things that we went through this process, we realized that most people don't know. They don't know about Voc Rehab. They don't know about some of the resources. They don't know about Workforce Connections, or they don't know the extent. And we literally, said, hey, we could just literally just say that all day and that would help the community. But I think that a lot of us are doing this work, and how are we going to capture that? And what is the, the board or the committee's, duty or obligation to share a report in? Is it a small opportunity on the meeting to say, hey, how many of you all are sharing resources? Check, check, check. Like what sort of, measures are there? Because I think a lot of us are doing this work. And like you said, it hasn't been coordinated down to pulling the data from it. But I think if we did some kind of poll, we actually would see that we are being much more successful in engaging the plan. But maybe nobody has asked us like, hey, have you been working on this? And maybe it felt like it was supposed to be on this office. But for me, I felt like it was a call to action for all of us to engage and kind of corral around. So I just wanted to say that moving forward, I think that has to be at the front. Like, okay, we're doing this. How are we collecting it? Who are we collecting it from? And it could be simple or complex, whatever's needed to satisfy for the state. But I think that's going to be the hurdle. And if we do the plan again and don't collect the data on did we get it done, then it's like, oh, well,
I agree. Nancy Olson for the record. When we first started talking about this, I saw it as an implementation tool to take what was put in the state plan and start to track the progress and determine the steps needed to make progress when progress was not being made. So as I said, it kind of grew from those conversations. And I think probably one of the first things we need to do as a group is determine, thank you, Kim, determine between the goals listed here and the goals that were in the state plan, what do we want to keep? Do we want to keep population, alignment, and collaboration, and maybe combine alignment and collaboration? Do we want to keep engagement?
Edward Estepona for the record. What's interesting about these goals, Nancy? These goals are three distinct goals. One's population based, one's engagement, and one's alignment. Where the one that you showed initially, the alignment and the collaboration were kind of the same.
Similar, yeah.
And I felt like engagement was missing. And so speaking to what Cam was talking about before she left, she really was talking about engagement. How are we letting people know all of these things? So I like these three. I think it works. Who are we serving? And are we reaching the ones that are that we need to reach the most, right? Like the most important group. How are we telling them? And then how are we all collectively as a group coming together to work cohesively and consistently together? Sounds like three good separate things to me. That's just my.
Nancy Olson for the record. What I'm hearing is that these three are good to go with, and possibly combining alignment and collaboration.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I don't think that categorizing of this is necessarily was the issue with the plan, right? I think this is that Edward's kind of laid it out. I think they're well thought out. I mean, essentially they are the essence of the government systems, or what we're trying to accomplish here, at least. I think the part that we would need to take a look at is when it comes to the execution portion. I don't know that we've gotten a buy-in from any of the people, any of the agencies that are listed in there. So it's difficult to accomplish something. Then, I guess whatever we're trying to accomplish hasn't really, it's not being done throughout the system. So then I guess the question for us is this a strategic plan where we are just collecting what's happening across the board with just some limited influence in our sphere, or is the plan driving the results across the system? And obviously that's much more difficult to accomplish and a lot easier to say. But I think as maybe Edward has mentioned, that we probably, or if you see to, I think the part that we would need to do is whatever aspects we are talking about a strategy aspect we're talking about, that we would need to have some representatives from some of these agencies to really feel whether they agree with that, what aspect of it they could do, or maybe what do they do within the agency that's a version of this, and kind of how can we get all of us aligned that way?
Yeah. Can you go on to, Tiffany, can you go on to the next page or two? I'm not sure. Oh, next one, sorry. Okay. So here is where we had the strategies for population. And my problem is not necessarily on some of the strategies, but they did start to throw a lot of people into the execution team. And like you said, you know, we haven't gotten buy-in from those people. And I'm not even sure in some cases that we can get buy-in from those people. I mean, they've got private businesses down here. Well, you know, first you have to define which ones we would be going to. That's not likely. Nonprofits, chambers of commerce. So, and this is the shared calendar of workforce events.
Which
And
is a
they
good idea. I believe, I wish we had something like that. I think that would be helpful.
Yeah.
There's so many things that are happening and some different aspects. I think that would be great for us to
Right.
have, you know, necessarily have to list in the execution part all of these partners. We can only list the ones that sign up. We could invite a lot of folks to a meeting and see what.
Yeah. Edward, that's point of record. I agree with Draws in on this. I think the people that are in this room constantly, we can certainly have in there as the execution team. And then I would even just say, here's a secondary wish list. If wishes could be fishes kind of thing. We'll include nonprofits, chamber of commerce, BNI, and all these other places. Let's take care of a house first before we invite other people to our house.
Yeah.
Because our houses could use a little sprucing.
So in looking at, one of the things that we need to figure out, so we talked about the goals.
May I ask a question or is it?
Oh, sure, of course.
As I see,
We're on discussion, so we're good.
as I see some of the proposed stakeholders, I'm wondering if they are already connected to the work in some ways. And so, for example, under population, as I look at the execution team, I think there are funded partners that are nonprofits, that there are chambers serving on the board or some of the workforce board, that there are businesses that are already part of industry sector partnerships in different regions of the state. So in some instances, there are stakeholders that are not only already connected to the work, but have some depth of understanding of how the system works because we are in partnership in some capacity. Is that the case?
Nancy Olson for the record. I think largely it is. And having some relationship with the workforce system, I think that's a long way from participating in a shared calendar. I mean, I agree that a lot of these nonprofits, chambers of commerce, et cetera, do have a relationship, and we hope to build more of a relationship. That's kind of the point. But that's a lot different than a shared calendar. And when we look at the strategies here, I mean, we don't have to accept all the strategies. We can pick and choose what we think are the most important ones or what we think are, going to be the most impact. I mean, like for instance, with a shared calendar, is there even such an animal out there? Is there a calendar type function that we could all access and put information in?
No, but I don't know that would be too difficult. I think we just have like a website that some folks are given access in key organizations to be able to input events, and then we start sharing that access to different folks that sign up. I mean, I think there's folks that are probably more knowledgeable than me on
Yeah.
that, but doesn't necessarily have to always be a complicated solution.
Right, Edward Estefan for record. I agree. Again, there are already systems out there. We don't need to recreate the wheel. Or even if one of the partners is in the process of building a website or something right now because they already have money or funding built in, we build in this feature so that it's housed somewhere in one of the partner site. Either or, I think this is in those things, those common website things, I think we start it with the partners and whoever we have is close by, and then it becomes really a communication deal of getting out to other people and saying, hey, did you know this singular calendar exists so that we don't step on each other's toes and have 3 career fairs all in the same area in the same day, right? So and better yet, if I know that there's 2 happening and during these times when we're dealing with budget cuts happening on the same day, why don't we just combine it so we're one and the same, right? So that we're being more efficient with the money. I think that's the whole purpose of that singular calendar. I don't think it's by any means to try to take away from anybody, but I think it's just better to communicate. So that can be easily done. I think there's already technology that exists for that.
So Nancy Olson for the record. So a couple questions that come up is who would oversee it? And David, I believe it's under population, but quite honestly, it could be alignment also. But
I was just in listening to how would we use this? Like it feels like it's kind of there. Like I think the intent is also so that it's available for outreach or whatnot. But I'm just trying to think like within the scope of item number 1, like is this where it belongs or not? Like the mechanics of it don't seem complicated. I do wonder about the communication and coordination, like that there's a like how do you operationalize it, or is it so that you can blast out awareness of this calendar that's intended to be a resource to help reach these communities? And if that's the case, then I guess my other question would be, is there thought about how information about this thing, like creating a thing, I guess is number 1, but also the communication strategy or how to actually use it, because like it's either a vicious cycle or a virtuous cycle. If it's created and it's never used, then it dies a slow death. If it's created and it's used and it's repeated and it's echoed and it's reposted or retweeted or whatevered, like if it's used and reinforced, it self-sustains. But I think that also, like, what you intend to do with it matters for how it's designed. If it's a shared Outlook calendar, not so great for social media blasts unless you have someone who's like, I'm going to make it my mission to, like, did you know this Tuesday there's blah 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 blah. Might be a bit of a tangent, but
So tying back to that, David, this is Edward Estefan for the record. I can see this simply as, okay, if it's like we're creating a shared calendar, that's number 1. And then number 2 is, how is it communicated? Okay, well, Owen, Dieter, all these Nevada Works, Workforce Connection, all these different organizations are then saying, okay, we need to have an agreement at this point how we will communicate this. So something's here. This is what we do. So even create basic, simple rules, right? 1, 2, 3 steps that are, again, super simplified and easy so that people can do it. I think it does start with the partnerships. And to me, it's like culture, even within our own group, creating a culture of working together and collaboration is the beginning. And then we can start bringing people into that group once that culture is established. But I think even simple little wins as, okay, there's a let's say there's a career fair somewhere in May 19th somewhere, and it's in Vegas, and maybe Dieter is the one that initially posts it, but then Workforce Connection sees it and goes, okay, let's share that. again, it's just that kind of thing where we're just trying to use the existing networks without asking somebody to spend money. Just be efficient with the system that we have now. And then as we get more resources, then we can figure out how to be smarter with those resources it's about spending money. But it's, again, there's a lot of resources that we already have that doesn't require spending money. It just requires a process and a system that people need to agree upon.
I do think we have to have, oh, Nancy Olson for the record. I do think we have to have an amount of oversight, or it becomes either, like you said, die a slow death, or like David said, die a slow death, or a social calendar, or people want to put something on there that doesn't belong, and you know, who is it that says, no, that shouldn't be on there? And who's going to host something like this? Because
Edward Estepona for record. I mean, I can ask the right people, but I can tell you right now, Employee NV at the moment is building some components to their website, not the actual software itself that does the job postings and those kind of things, but more of a front end of the website, because their website's kind of clumsy right now. So in doing so, it would make a whole lot of sense, because an Employee NV handles so much of the workforce related stuff anyway within the career fairs and so on. It would make sense for them to do it. And it would be them to, again, they can certainly manage it and say, no, we don't allow this event in. And again, there could be, we could start as simple as whoever's the ownership or whoever's in this partnership that we're talking about, they get access to this calendar. And we would know who's posting and who's not posting till we get a cadence of what we can post and what we can't post, which will take a few months. We'll figure that out. And before we invite anybody else from the outside world to be able to post, or we maybe not invite people from the outside world, but rather they would use any of the partners to be the ones that doing the posting on their behalf. So it keeps it uncontrolled. Again, it's a process and system that we can create, and certainly bringing the people in Dieter to be able to talk about it and say, okay, yeah, we can do that. We'll handle that part, because it falls easily under our world already. I think those are the things that can happen. I really think it's not super hard. It's somebody stepping up, and there's going to be a point when it's voc rehab makes the sense for whatever it is for something, right? And we just do what we think is logically what we think makes the most sense. And that's who we should align, who should be in charge. And again, because so many of this group, the strategic planning group, all of us belong to one of these entities. We all hold each other accountable when we're in this meeting to talk about this. I think that's how the global group, there isn't one boss of anybody in this group. We're all the boss of our own selves, but we all have to come in together with the best idea and thought of going, we're trying to be the best for Nevada, so we're going to work together for Nevada.
And Ariana put in the chat that maybe Owen could get funding for this. They would be, if they could get funding, they would be the most appropriate to house it for everyone.
And that's fine if that's what that makes sense.
So Brett Miller for the record. So I've got a couple of thoughts. First, I'm going to go back to the one with where we were talking about execution teams. I think we need to add to this, if we're going to keep anything like this format, we need to separate between stakeholders and execution teams, because a lot of these people, as has been pointed out, are external, and they may be stakeholders, but they're not going to be the ones doing the work, right? So I think that would be useful and solve one problem with the way this is laid out. Two, my initial thought was, oh, Owen's the correct place, but increasingly we're talking about branding here. And the problem is Owen doesn't serve people. Owen doesn't serve businesses, right? The current brand that we have that serves businesses is Employee NV, right? So I would say that wherever it lands, it has to be branded Employee NV. And if it's not a central location, then it's just as bad as having 12 calendars, right? I mean, you need one person or one place for businesses or participants to go, and it probably needs to be a different site because the needs are unique between those two groups. And I'll let it go at that.
And I do, Edward Espinosa for record, right? I do agree. Employee NV, it makes sense from a brand perspective. I think so much of the challenges we have is we have so many different brands because every state department or entity wants to get their credit. And the problem is to the consumer at the end of the day, it's very simple. I want this service. And I just want to go to one place that solves all this problem for me. I don't want to think about 5 different places, and I don't want to get it confusion to arise. So again, I understand why things are what they are. And I'm not here to say we're taking away people's brand or anything, but I think when you're having a global calendar like this, it does make sense for it to go to a global hub. And Employee NV is the biggest global hub right now we probably have in this state. If we can make Employee NV's brand as big as Indeed is on a national basis, and we have it for Nevada, then if every Nevadans know that they have to go here for employment or for potential employer who wants to get a job filled at their business, then we've achieved everything we needed to do because once they come into that gate, then if somebody needs to go for adult education, they're going to send them to you, Nancy. And if somebody needs to go for disability training, Brazen, we're going to send them to you because it's one place that just be becoming very efficient.
Yeah, for sure. Nancy Olson for the record. David, you said even just being in a coordination role might work. Were you speaking for yourself?
No, I was talking about Owen, just because like there might be challenges to getting the funding to do it. But I do think it makes sense to me that Owen is kind of this, touching lots of things and helping with the board in particular feels like a natural kind of center point. Like even if I think to Edward's point, like Employee NV is I think the place, that's where the guts are. That's the like you don't want people to have to think I need to go to 17 different places to find services. You want them to go like, I go here. And so I think Employee NV makes sense for that. But even then, like not having to necessarily run it to someone in like, workforce services or Title I or Title III or whatever, but like if there was a way for Owen to help coordinate between different partners, different, you know, cities, locals, counties, nonprofits, whatever, like that feels, according to my understanding of what they do, not to speak for other parts of the department, but that feels like it would be kind of in the intended role for them within the workforce system. And just to emphasize, like on the point of like sort of brand penetration, like there was a survey that CBER did of unemployed people in the state, and one of the questions that we got was like, what have you done in your job search? Have you do you apply on employer websites? Do you go to Indeed? Do you go to Employee NV? And like direct to employer websites and the big private service providers, by far and away, like Employee NV penetration was here, and I go straight to the source was much higher. And so if we want to align this within the public workforce system and increase the penetration, I think that's really vital, is making sure that it's like this is where we can go to get services. As as much as we can target it in one place, because otherwise I think we are just so diffuse that we don't register, and it's as effective as doing nothing.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would also like just to add, this is Drazen. I think there's definitely a lot of folks that we can kind of reach with this calendar, and like a lot of different kind of stakeholders that could benefit from it. But I think if you sometimes try to like meet everybody's needs at the beginning, we'll kind of get stuck into just thinking that it's too big of a problem, or like having a kind of issue getting it started, because I think a lot of it at the end comes to funding. We definitely will kind of talk to our kind of theater partners to see, or to director and Troy and Josh, to see if this is something that could be funded by theater. I think even if Owen was to get a grant, I think the problem would always be long-term funding, because a lot of the grants kind of expire. So I think the umbrella the theater provides is really the cost allocation of the services that are provided by that admin part of theater. That's always going to be there, which is not necessarily a victim to ending grants. So if we are able to add it to our website, whether it be employee NV or theaters, obviously makes a lot more sense on employee NV, but just getting something basic started and then kind of going from there.
Yeah. And Nancy, again, this can be very simple. It can live in employee NV world, and from a website standpoint, and they can make sure there's budget purposely there. But when we talk about the administration purpose of this calendar, Owen themselves can be the one in charge of it. And I think, again, there's already staffing in Owen already that exists, and that gives Owen now that ability to kind of be the uniter in this group, and without putting another extra task on Dieter staff, workforce staff specifically, right? Where maybe this is a more auxiliary to what they do. Again, let's just work that out. I don't think, again, I've seen this before. I think Dieter would have no problem, and this is just my gut telling me this, of saying, yeah, let's build this tool and we're going to create it. And then, okay, as long as we know who's operating it and who at the end of the day who's administering it, they can have just unique access just to this one part of the site. And it's simple as that.
Nancy Olson for the record. Tiffany, do you think that Owen has the bandwidth to do something like this if we got the funding from Dieter?
I can talk to Marshall about that. If it's just the shared calendar, I mean, it's possible to put that on our website, because we already do the shared calendar of, all the meetings for GWDB.
Yeah.
It could be housed here.
But yeah, I think the part of it is that I think it would be too much for any one person to get all of the inputs for themselves to put it on the calendar. I think the part that we want to create is a place where folks themselves can kind of enter events. And I don't know if I don't want to talk out of term, but maybe so that way that the administration is not all on one person, because that's the part that probably we won't be able to afford, to just identify a person and have them like spend 20-30% of their 40% of the jobs maintaining this. But more so the role, I think, from the OM would be just to monitor the content for appropriate fit and address issues as they happen.
Yeah, the ideal thing, it's Nancy Olson for the record. I think the ideal thing would be that we are each able to go in and enter our event or whatever. And then there's somebody that is looking and saying, oh no, you can't, invite people to your pampered chef party, So I mean, that's what I think we really
And Nancy, if Edward Estepona for the record, just so you know, so when we did the website for Nevada Housing Division, God, this is back in 2014. One of the things that we had to do specifically for their Home is Possible program was we created a portal where realtors and lenders could go in and input their company and say, this is what we do, these are the services we have. And then what would happen is as soon as they submitted something on their own, because they self-submitted, what would happen is it would go to an administrator email that says, do you approve this? And when they hit yes, boom, it goes up on the website. If they hit no, they'll go back and hit no and then come back and say, this is why this isn't appropriate, back to the person that sent it. So it was very seamless, and it didn't take a lot of time. Oddly enough, it was very quick, and by golly, did we get a lot of people. We had over 150 realtors submit and over, I don't know, 50 lenders. So you can get that to happen. And I think, again, it's not that the technology doesn't exist, because it already exists and it's already there. It's just a matter of just implementing it.
Ariana put, who can we check with at Dieter to check the viability of funds? Would Chris Nelson be the right person to start with?
Yeah, she controls all the money.
Drozen said he'd do it.
Huh?
Drozen said he'd do it in the chat.
Oh, okay. All right. Great. Well, I'm friends with Chris, so I'm always willing to, set up a time to talk to Chris. And I love it, David, you earn $1,600 a day with one weird trick. Yeah, we definitely have to
I
have
say it not just in jest though, like looking at the feedback from the unemployment survey that we did, like a number of people just in like free form, what else do you want to say? There was a lot of feedback about like job ads are scammy and I don't know who I can trust or where I can go. And so I think that quality, like, know that this is a trusted source. We're not going to send you to a Tupperware seminar or whatever. Like, I think that is an important part of, again, when it comes to outreach and branding, like this is quality, this is verified, this is vetted, this is whatever we have to do so that people know it's reliable.
Right. And I think that's what separates us from the Indeeds, right? Because anybody can put any ad in Indeed. There's nothing that restricts you. And again, we have that. The other thing I think that separates all of Employ NB to Indeed or any of these big places is we have physical places in Nevada that they can go to. Plain and simple, physical places. Nobody else has online and physical locations at the same time.
You mean the people that are trying to offer me a job on my text?
Exactly.
Not real? Okay. Nancy Olson for the record. One thing I did want to touch on is the format of this. I think, we will send this out, or we already did send this out. And what I think we need to do is to have everyone go through and, action items that are unrealistic or, that just are too much in some cases, make some notes on it so that when we come back, we can start that. And David, don't worry, I know who you are. So if Tiffany comes back to me and says, who was that guy talking? I can tell her. But the population one has, I think, 6 strategies. Can you go up one, Tiffany? Oh, no, okay, just the 3. Then, okay, not as bad as I thought. So if you look through, can you go up another one? I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, back, down. Yeah, there you go. Okay. And then engagement. If you go one more. Okay. Engagement has these 2 strategies, and then alignment has several. If you guys can look at these and say, for instance, look, this isn't going to work, or we don't have money for this, or this could work, but it could work this way, something like that. If you would try to take a look at this and figure out, which ones we want to keep, which ones we want to tweak, and which ones we want to throw out altogether. And then the format, you know, we can keep this formatting, but we don't have to. We've been given kind of the go-ahead by Don Soderberg to make any changes we want to this. He kind of thought the same thing that I think all of us did, and it was like, whoa, this is complicated. So I think that, you know, the starting point here is to look through these and figure out what do we want to keep, what do we want to get rid of, and what do we want to change.
I think, Edward Estepona for the record, I think with the format, I think these multiple columns just get confusing as hell. And I know why they did it the way they did it, so they could get it all into one page. You know, maybe even to simplify this, again, let's go for do what we call the primary goal in strategy 1. And then we can say, if we reach that, then here's a secondary goal that we can go next. And then the third, right? Like,
I like that.
I think this is ambitious, what they went for. And I'm all for swinging for the fences. But some of the members, from what I recall doing this initially, they were in the private sector. And what I know pretty much with the private sectors, they have no understanding the pacing that moves in a government sector and how many different things could trip up people. Because there's a lot of different things, regulations, rules, culture that trips people up. And private sector always assumes they can just do whatever they want to turn on a dime. It's not that I think every state person wants to move fast, but I think there's these rules that they have to follow so they don't get their hands slapped. So I think, again, simplifying it by saying, let's just try this. Let's just put the top goal that we want into strategy 1. And then let's prioritize. And here's a second one if we reach that. But under each goal, we can say who's in charge and then time frame. And that's keep it simple that way. And I think you're fine. And if you never get to goal 2, that's okay too. That's something that we shoot for in the next strategic plan. And I know that if we start doing this, we're going to get faster and better. Like in the beginning right now, it's kind of clumsy how we're working because nobody wants to step on anybody's toes. So they're trying to be nice. But at this, you know, once we get a cadence going, I guarantee you this group will move faster. But I think what was happening in the past is they were artificially trying to move it faster. And this is the outcome that you got, which is a bunch of people that are pissed off.
Nancy Olson for the record. I also think, you know, when we did the work on the state plan, the work group was able to just go at it, no restrictions. It was like, you know, here you go. With this one, we've been told that it needs to be a public meeting. That slows things down too. There's just no doubt. I mean, we'll do what we need to do, but it does slow things down.
So, Edward Estepona for the record, let me ask a question on this then. And again, maybe we need DAG to be in here to answer this question specifically on that. But from my understanding is you can stand up any framework. You just can't vote on it. And by time you get to it and you leave it for discussion, that's where there's opportunities to vote or make changes or whatever collectively. But I understand that maybe where DAG gets all hung up is if there's too many of us in the same room, we have a quorum, but we're not approving anything. So I don't know. I mean, again, this is part of the thing that the private sector has no comprehension of. And that's fine. I do, because I belong to enough boards that I know what happens with this. But I would definitely reach out to DAG and say, how can we work faster without breaking these open meeting laws? Because I think there's got to be a way. Nobody's trying to be nefarious here. Nobody's trying to pull a switcheroo on the public. I think we want to move fast and use everybody's resources and spend our time wisely. So
Yeah.
let's just figure that out because there's got to be a solution.
This is Deputy Attorney General David Gardner. I'm happy to give you ideas.
Great. Please give us ideas.
Okay. When you create a subcommittee is required to comply with the open meeting law. It doesn't matter if there's only 3 of you. If you don't create a subcommittee, then anything less than quorum can talk about anything they want. So if you guys don't create a subcommittee, you just have, okay, 3 of you guys are just going to go off your own. We're not creating a subcommittee or work group or anything like that. You go do your own thing. That is completely allowed under the open meeting law. The problem that we run into is typically when people create subcommittees, a subcommittee is by law required to follow that. The second one is when you're deliberating towards an action or taking an action and you have a quorum, it has to follow the open meeting law. So sometimes we have meetings where it's just a brainstorm meeting. You don't make any decisions. It's just a bunch of brainstorming and then bring all those facts to the board. That meeting would not have to comply with the open meeting law. So those are the main 2 ways we get around it, is you don't have a quorum and it's not a subcommittee, or you just have a meeting where there's no deliberation. You're just brainstorming and then you bring everything to the board. So if you come up with 10 ideas, you bring all 10 to this body and then the body votes and can narrow them down. That small group cannot narrow them down. That's really what they're looking for. So those would be the 2 most common ways that I've seen. But yeah, don't create subcommittees because a lot of boards like to do that. And they're saying, okay, well, these 3 people, they're creating a subcommittee, but that just means they have to comply with the open meeting law.
Yeah. Well, in the work group, Nancy Olson for the record, the work group has to comply because we are making decisions, correct?
Well, once again, it depends on how you set it up. Under the open meeting law, if you create a subcommittee, work group, task force, doesn't matter how it's named. If it's a subgroup of the body, they're obligated to hold a meeting.
Okay.
If it's just 3 members of the board or 5 members of the board, whatever's less the quorum, just to get together and they decide to go do their own thing and they decide to go do all this work on their own, that is not subject to the open meeting law. So it's the formality that requires you to comply with the open meeting law.
So Nancy, this is Edward Espona for the record. So if I'm hearing this right, what I would do is then say, I want to brainstorm strategy 1. I want to create some brainstorms, and then just, again, not establish groups per se, because I don't want to break open meeting laws, but then letting those smaller brainstorming sessions happen would allow us to then bring all those back up to the larger group to get some agreement. And then that's where the voting and all this other stuff happens, and informing and voting, right? Because that smaller brainstorming session would say, here's all of our findings. What do you guys think?
I'm good with that.
That's the key trick. You can't make a recommendation.
Right.
No quorum, no recommendation.
Right.
No
These are just
quorum,
findings.
and right. You can do here's a report, and we'll present that to you. You make the decision.
Yeah.
That's the way we've always done it down here.
I think if that is clear and clean, that'll allow us to move faster and go in areas where we need to go, where have people can attend to sessions that they have expertise or want to go into. The key of it is to make sure we don't ever have a quorum by numbers.
Well, we also, Nancy Olson for the record, we also we're making recommendations.
Right.
Like it or not, we're making recommendations. And so I'm not sure we can really get around it.
It's not a recommendation, Nancy. It's semantics at this point. We're making a report. The report is a report. The board then, this group then has to decide on the direction you want to go in. You're just putting a report out that said, here are all our findings based on strategy 1. Here's what we discussed. Here's what all our findings. What does this group want to do with these findings now?
This is Deputy General Attorney David Gardner, just to kind of explain it, or I'll try to explain it clearly. If you brainstorm and you come up with 10 ideas and then you submit all 10 ideas to the public body, that is a brainstorming session that is not subject to the open meeting law. If you come up with 10 ideas and you bring that down to 5 and you put those 5 into a report, that is a decision that is deliberating and that has to comply with the open meeting law. So that's the difference. So it's brainstorming means we bring everything that we got to the main board and they're the ones who winnow it down.
Yep. Makes sense.
Yeah, to me, it doesn't sound like we have a way around open meeting law because that's the whole gist of this. We're not really gonna come up with 10 per each strategy and let them decide. That would be like an insane amount of work. We're basically coming up with one of each and saying, this is what we think would be best. So I'm not sure we can get around it.
I mean, I think this is Drazen. At the end, when any one of us are thinking and you're putting things on a paper before you come to a meeting, you're going down some ideas and you're discarding some. So it's not like, I think when we are in a discussion, the things that we've it wouldn't be would we say that every comment that's made in that discussion would need to be recorded as an idea? Or would the idea be only of the people that are there, they're thinking these are good ideas, they're worth to kind of to put in some kind of report, because I don't think that we can function that where every discussion that we have has to be done in a public meeting setting, because then it will be, I guess, a little bit challenging to work. But maybe the question is the other question I had. So you mentioned that if there's no quorum, if there's no quorum in a meeting and some subject is discussed, then when we kind of have some type of a let's not call it a report, set of notes from that meeting, would that be then I guess would that be allowable, right? Because we are kind of all joined, we have like a set of common notes that we think we've come up with. So I don't know, David, if you can.
This is Deputy Attorney General David Gardner. Yeah, that is the other way it can be done. So the definition of a meeting, which means it has to have has to be in public, has to follow the open meeting law, is you have to have quorum plus deliberation or action. So you get rid of any of those, either you get rid of deliberation action, so it's just a brainstorming, or you get rid of the quorum and you're fine. The only concern that I have is if you create a subcommittee, even if that's say 3, and those 3, that's not a quorum, but that subcommittee is now a new public body. The quorum of that public body is now 2. So that's what I'm saying. If you guys create a subcommittee, then that subcommittee is subject to the open meeting law. If you were just 3 of you decide to go together and talk, you can talk about anything you want. Anything under the sun, you can make up any notes you want, you can make up a report, you can do whatever you want, and then you bring that to the body. It just can't be formalized into a working group, task force, subcommittee, anything like that. That's where because like I said, any of those type of groups are required to comply with the open meeting law. If it's just 3 members meeting, 3 members can meet and do whatever they want.
If we have coordination and, to meet, then that becomes a meeting.
Well, this is Deputy Attorney David Gardner. In my experience, one of the ways that they've done this is like, it's not done at meetings. These members just go talk amongst themselves. They'll talk to a couple other members. They'll do their own thing. They'll do their own discussions, and then they'll just bring a report saying, "Hey guys, we talked, and this is what we want to bring in front of the board." That would not be a meeting.
Right.
It would be this body or the main body voting to create the subcommittee, voting to create the working group. That's when you start getting into meetings. Because if you don't have a quorum, they can't deliberate or take an action. You need quorum to do an action. You need quorum to deliberate. So, like I said, if you get rid of the quorum, you're fine. Just don't create a subcommittee if you're trying to speed things up. Don't create a work group. Don't create a task force, because that would put you right back in the same boat you are before.
Can I ask one more clarification on that? If we were to say Nancy, just because, for sake of pointing at someone whose face is always out there, can you go and work on this topic. And Nancy, by going and working on that topic, decides to call Drazen and calls Edward and then talks to a couple of us on the side. Like, can we ask someone to go and work? Or would that constitute like creating a subgroup or working committee or something else? Like, can you task someone to kind of crunch on it, or can we not even do that and we just need someone to, on their own initiative, do whatever?
This is Deputy Superintendent Vigardo. That should be fine. Tasking, you could ask one person to do it. You wouldn't hold a vote on it. It would just be like, hey, who wants to volunteer for this? Okay, Nancy, you want to volunteer for this? Awesome. You go and then and report back to the public. You report back to us, but you do your own thing. Just make sure that you don't talk to enough people that it creates a quorum. That's your big thing. As long as you don't create a quorum, you're one under quorum, that's fine. Just don't talk to enough people to create quorum, because that's where you start getting into open meeting law violations.
When you
Tiffany,
say quorum,
Tiffany, Nancy, I was just going to ask, this is Edward Estepona for the record. Tiffany, do we know what constitutes a quorum for this group?
that's what I was gonna ask.
The magic number, Tiffany.
Tiffany Vasquez, for the record, it is 3 members, 3 voting members.
Okay.
That's kind of tough.
Yeah, so it'd have to be 2 or less. So
Yeah. Okay. Well, I think we probably need to move forward with keeping it as an open meeting, much as I don't want to. I don't see how we're gonna not. So I think at least for the time being, we will keep it as an open meeting. But I would ask that everyone take a look at these strategies. I'm thinking maybe we can put this in an Excel version. What do you think, Ariana?
For the record, yeah, whatever's clever. We can put it in Excel, we can put it just kind of like Edward was saying, I think in a Word version, just kind of aligned, strategy.
A word
and with
makes
the
it simple.
below, it's strategy 2 with the things below, like a essay. Whichever way is fine.
Okay.
I think, Nancy, if we can just get it in a Word and then or even a simple PDF, we can just add our notes into. I think that's even a good first start, right? Because even then, once we see all the notes come through, we can just go, oh, you could say, all right, I'm going to task you, Edward, to do this part. And then I can call one person and then we can figure out and then bring it back to the larger group. Again, I don't know, maybe that we won't need to come together. Again, let the notes determine where the sticky problems are or where they're not, right? And just start there.
All right, well, we'll get this, Nancy Olson for the record, we will get this into some format easily to send out. And, yeah, we'll do that. And, I think we've scheduled these meetings for monthly.
Is there, quick question, Ariana Florence for the record, is there any way to make these meetings potentially less often and longer? It feels like once we can actually get together, it's okay. But getting that time on the schedule is what's difficult. So having more opportunities is not as good as having longer opportunities, I guess. I don't know if that works for people though.
I'm fine, Nancy Olson for the record, I'm fine with it. We had it scheduled today for 2 hours. I don't know that we would.
That's enough.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I don't think we want to schedule it longer than that.
Yeah, 2 hours I think is good.
Yeah. And Tiffany, can you tell me if I thought we had scheduled this monthly.
So we haven't decided on dates.
Ah, okay, that's agenda item.
So.
Oh, no, it's not on here.
It should be on 10. Oh, sorry, Tiffany Vasquez for the record. The future meeting dates is on agenda item 10.
Here it is. Here it is.
So
Yeah,
So Edward Estepona, for the record, one of the things that I have found to be successful, at least in when you're meeting consistently, is if the date is consistent, like every third Thursday of the month or something. Okay, we scope that out on our calendar moving forward. It doesn't, we block it. And the only time I ever see that things get sticky is when people have vacations, and that will just happen. And when that happens, they'll catch up.
so moving on to agenda item number 10 for possible action. Discuss and determine future meeting schedule for working group. So that is item number 10. The same time frame in May will be immediately after Memorial Day. So I don't want to try to do that.
You want to do it on a Thursday, the last Thursday of every month?
If we skip May, yes.
So you would know the 29th is not something that's doable?
It's not.
Okay,
It'll be in St. Louis.
okay. Let me ask this question. If we go a week earlier, like a Thursday, the third Thursday, which is the 22nd, that would put us, well, then we get into problem with
Actually, the third
Juneteenth.
Thursday would be the 15th in May.
Yeah, and then you get into problem with June, because you got Juneteenth, which is a state holiday. So go back to Tuesday.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm okay if the Memorial Day is on the 27th, are you guys okay for the 20th? And then following month would be the 17th.
I may have to do it from Great Basin, but well, shoot.
The 20th,
Yeah,
work unless it's not at 2 p.m. So I'm not sure if it would work.
no, doesn't work very well. Now that week before would work.
Tuesdays are terrible for me.
Okay.
Thursdays, I think, that's what we used to meet on when we were working on it before. Same basic group.
I'm good on Thursdays and Fridays. Fridays are usually my best days, but I can make Thursdays work.
I hate to say it,
Fridays work
but
too.
Fridays are better.
Fridays are clearer for me because people, for whatever reason, don't want to have meetings on Friday.
How about May 22nd?
I'm fine with that.
Okay. It's a Thursday.
Didn't you tell Elko we'd be going out there?
The Monday through Wednesday.
Okay.
Yep.
22nd, 23rd are fine with me, either or.
22nd's good for me, 23rd will not work. So let's say 1:30 to 3:30 again.
I'm fine with that.
Would we be able to do
Motion?
fourth Thursdays in general?
Yeah,
Like those often work well for me. May actually is better because there's that fifth week. I wouldn't be able to do June on that schedule, but
Nobody can do June on that schedule because everybody's off.
yeah. Yeah.
I say the fourth, not the third. The third I can't do. I've got a conflict on those at 3 o'clock.
Okay.
Do we have to determine every single sorry, Ariana Florence for the record. Do we have to determine every single meeting right now, or can we go one at a time? I mean, it sounds like
let's
we
go
go
to-
one at a
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
Just make
Let's
sure.
go May 22nd.
Let's
go
do
May
the May
22nd.
22nd.
And then kick that can down the curb a little bit longer.
Exactly. All right, can I get a motion to have the next meeting, May 22nd at 1:30 to 3:30?
Edward Espona for record, I make the motion to have the next meeting on May 22nd from 1:30 to 3:30.
Dave Schmidt, I'll second.
Second. All in favor, say aye.
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 Great. Okay. Okay, so, moving on to agenda item number 11. Before that, before I move on, I would kindly request that any member of the work groups that arrived late after roll call was taken, please identify yourselves at this time, so you are marked present.
Dave Schmidt.
Thank you.
Tiffany Tyler Garner.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 11. Members of the public are invited for final comments. Do we have any public comments on the telephone? Do we have any public comments on Zoom? Okay, hearing no further comments, I hereby move to adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.